y'all doing
Yeah,
today, man?
man, doing all right, doing all right. How about
Doing
you?
great.
Pretty
Happy
good.
to be back here.
Yeah, I'm over here still at the office. I felt like it would just be easy. I have to make like a 45 minute commute home. Which has been wearing on my body, but yeah, I just figured it'd be cooler. So I'm just like shooting this in the office right now. But for
Yeah,
everybody who
man.
doesn't know, this is the Future DDS podcast. We have two different generations of dentists here, I guess. We have a pre-dent, Nick, who works closely with us within the Future DDS universe, and then of course Terrell and I. We're just here to kind of talk about the past, the present. Nick's always keeping us up to date on what's going on in the pre-dental space, and we're kind of talking to him about what it's like to actually be a dentist. So, we formed this great partnership, and we just kind of wanted to bring some of our conversations to y'all because we get a lot of value from them, and so we hope that you all do too. So yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. We were actually just telling Nick about, some of the things, or we were having this conversation about some of the things that really were important through dental school, some of the things that we thought were important through dental school that didn't really actually end up being important at all. And then
at all,
and now some of the things that, again, that just end up leaving a lasting impression, even though they might have seemed simple in the moment. So I guess we'll just jump in there, start talking about a few things, touch on some things like grades, maybe some of those initial friendships or some of those things, get a little spicy. Say, nah, I'm just messing. But some of these things, man. And
well,
just
how about this? Oh, my bad. Go ahead, Terrell.
No, I was just saying, thinking back to, I was going to jump in and think about, when I was, we were getting to Tufts, orientation week. Everybody's dressed to the T, super business casual. Some people got on suits every day. Some people got on, some people are dying to get into the scrubs early already. Like, we're not seeing the lab. There's so many different aspects and different things that seemed unknown at the time. And then once you start getting into the flow, and I guess blinded by the work and the long nights and all these different things, I guess the more important things start to rise to the top, and they shine through. I think, it's funny. The most important things will definitely be different for every person. Probably different for Tyler than me, than I'm sure Nick when he gets to school, and a lot of other people out there listening right now. Everyone has their own perspective, especially based on what they want to do. So I think one of the more important, I guess, takeaways from dental school that I got from that is, kind of establishing your path, or understanding your vision, your personal vision for dental school. And that eventually will turn into your philosophy and your path for the dentistry that you want to try to, I guess, practice in the long run. So I guess we could start there. Just kind of, see and tell stories of how our visions of dental school, and, Nick's vision of when he gets to dental school, what it's going to look like, how it will actually come to fruition, and how each individual person's mindset and philosophy will shape their experience within that experience. So, I guess I'll start, a little bit, or I guess me and Tyler can kind of tell our experiences through dental school, and then Nick can tell us his.
Yeah, what I was gonna say was, like, should we ask Nick? Because I remember you had just said, Terrell, like, you were like, yeah, what we thought was gonna be important when we first started, and I'm like, maybe we should even ask Nick, like, what do you think matters? You haven't been, but like you have that fresh mind. Like we've been tainted. I mean, we've been through it. We've been through it. So,
not at all.
So we know what it is, right? But coming in, what do you think matters? Within the dental school system, I guess.
Yeah, so I feel like I might be biased because I've spoken to you guys a lot, but
sure, yeah.
Based on like what I've learned, one, it depends, right? Like if you want to do like specialty versus like you want to be a general dentist, I feel like it's definitely different, because if you want to be a specialist, then I feel like you have to be on top of everything in school and perform well just for your application, just like an undergrad, really. Like you don't retain anything really that you learn in undergrad. You're just kind of like proving yourself to get to the next stage. And I feel like if you're considering residency, like, or specializing, then that's the case for dental school. Like, that's the way I view it. But if you want to be a general dentist, it seems like getting your people skills together is probably like one of the most important things. Hand skills, obviously, just being confident with treatment planning. So I would say the practical aspect of it, like the theory, the didactic courses, all that stuff, like, yeah, they're nice, like you need them, but I would stress on trying to get, I don't know if it's possible, getting 100% on a practical rather than 100% on a written exam. Like I would allocate more time towards like being in sim lab and just trying to see as many different cases as possible than being at home and studying my textbooks.
Man, yeah. I mean, I feel like, and it's crazy because when you say that, it just takes me back to having a similar perspective of, okay, I know how to study to an extent. Like I know if I had to learn something, I could always try to learn it. So this is a time to kind of focus on those clinical skills, those things you haven't necessarily done in the past before. I think one of the biggest things, or one of the biggest misnomers about dental school, is that aspect of having to be like a super bookworm or a super smart person, 4.0 GPA in order to get into a specialty field. Of course, you definitely have to be on top of it. You have to be very knowledgeable within a certain field, but and it's similar to getting into dental school. I think relationships and building that network as well plays a very important aspect of that as well, which kind of gets overlooked. I'm not going to say it's like the only thing or it's going to overshadow the grades aspect, but I think it is something that's more overlooked. And I think going through dental school and seeing some of our classmates that maybe got into programs versus some students that didn't get into programs where, I can tell you who was maybe going out or who was really in the lab working on hand skills versus, acing tests, or at least studying enough to, or focusing more so on the grades aspect, getting into programs versus not getting into programs, knowing people versus not knowing people, building relationships in departments and, making those connections in those programs they wanted to get into versus not doing that and just kind of focusing solely on the books or solely on being really good at extraction. Like you could be really good at extraction, but if you don't know any of the professors to let you, to kind of them see your work, them know who you are, then be able to go to bat for you for an oral surgery residency or a perio residency or different things like that, maybe a little harder or a little bit different path for you to try to get into one of those programs. So I think it's interesting though. It's an interesting perspective to have, especially coming in.
And sorry, I want to ask, do you think a pass-fail school would be like way better in like basically all regards, because you don't have to stress about being top of your class or ranked or anything like that. Like at that point you have like way more freedom to focus on like the soft skills or hand skills, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think pass-fail schools, as long as there is some type of measure, I don't know what that would be, but some type of measure to get into these specialty programs, right? Like, for example, I know that oral surgery, you still have to take that test. I think a test is necessary to get into oral surgery. I do. Like, there is so much that, not even that you need to know, but you need to show that you're passionate enough to be able to really go and do all of these operations, right? And granted, not to say that you being a general dentist, you're not doing anything serious, because you still are. Like you can easily really, really mess somebody up if you do not know what you're doing. But I think when it comes to oral surgery and, you start talking about, doing face reconstruction and things of that nature, you kind of really, really need to be passionate about what you're doing, or at least have enough passion to sit down and learn all these different terms. I guess they do they do IV sedation, or do they have a dental anesthesiologist come in?
Not sure. I'm sure they work with an anesthesiologist as well, but being able to manage a patient that's IV sedated, or
it's huge,
God forbid
right?
something goes awry during that procedure, you're the main doc, you're the point of contact, or you're the point person in that procedure. So
right.
You
And I
have,
mean,
you know,
no, absolutely. And even then, I mean, like, everybody can't be a pediatric dentist. Everybody can't be an orthodontist. So I definitely do think that there needs to be some type of filter. But as far as doing the pass fail system, I do believe in pass fail. I think that it will give people the opportunity to be better at general dentistry, which is the base of all of this. Like, you need to be able to know how to do a crown. You need to be able to identify caries. Caries is cavities. You need to be able to do these very, very simple things. And I think that once you take away the pressure of having to sit down and memorize, 10,000 facts for a test, and instead, have a lab where we're looking at how caries can look 1,000 different ways, I think that would yield more than, me memorizing something from a book. So, no, I think pass fails would be pretty decent. I mean, I wish we had pass fail, in dental school. But in a grand scheme, if you are trying to be general, isn't everything kind of pass fail?
I mean, essentially, and
Essentially,
that's,
right?
yeah. I mean, a lot of people get that misnomer of, or it's not even a misnomer, but again, I don't know, I like that word misnomer, but neither here nor there. But I think people just get into that competitive nature of dental school. Like,
Right.
Tyler always jokes or speaks about how after a test, I would go and do whatever, go to the gym, try to get away from everyone talking about the answers and just kind of discussing like, oh, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Like, how hard was the test for you? All these different things. Where at the end of the day, you can't really go back and change it. All you can really do is build on it regardless of what you got. So whether you got 100 on that test, if you decide not to study for the rest of the semester, you're not building your knowledge anyway. You're not like getting into a lab. You're not getting into a clinic to learn anything more because you have this sense of validation of being at this level. Where at the end of the day, I mean, no job interview or no conversation you have with a recruiter, they ask you what your rank was.
That's true.
They don't necessarily care in the aspect of class rank or where you stacked up against your other classmates, but they care more about the interaction you have with the patient. How you can communicate with people. Are you personable? Can you work in a team setting? Like, a lot of these things where dental school doesn't necessarily focus on teaching you these aspects, or at least doesn't promote these aspects from the outside looking in, so to speak, or from the inside looking out to other people, where people inside, they're in this bubble and they're like, oh, I gotta grind, I gotta get this A, I gotta get this 100%. Where at the end of the day, you can have a 4.0, but if you can't sell a treatment plan, then you realistically won't be a successful dentist in the long run, unless you obviously get super specialized or do research, different things like that. But there's ways to be successful. But in terms of patient interaction, yeah.
But no, and even to piggyback off that, we never want to say that grades aren't important, because this is the main thing that I want to say is, if you are in the system of, I guess, the normal numeric system, whereas you get A, B, C, Ds, whatever it may be, I always try to tell everybody, like, granted, do not make grades your life, like Terrell says, getting those reps, being in the lab, having conversations with professors and your classmates who are doing these professors is ultimately more important. But I'm telling you, that first year, please, if you hear any advice from me, please do the best you can in these classes, y'all.
Yep.
Because what ends up happening is people will come into dental school, and we've seen this happen. We have seen this happen. People come into dental school and they say, oh, yeah, man, I hear grades don't really matter. I'm not stressing it like that. Whatever. I'm cool. I'll coast. I'll get a 3.0 and I'll be fine. That's what they think. So then they come into dental school, and that 3.0 really turns out to be a 2.3, a 2.4, because they're not used to the sheer volume of information that they are receiving. So now what happens is, you started your second year when the classes are getting even more difficult, and you're trying to balance all these different things, all these projects and things going on. And you also have that added stress of, hold on, I might be on academic probation if I don't score a 80 on this next test. And so my whole thing is, especially for people who are in their master's programs and I guess everybody's seen a lot of these science courses before, make sure you aim to get the highest grades possible your first year, because I promise you, it's a lot easier coming like slowly coming down like this than you trying to raise up throughout the years. Like
Yep.
it is stressful. And, unfortunately, Terrell and I being through the situation, we've had friends who had to repeat years. We've seen multiple people have to sit back, and that is devastating. You want to talk about everybody stressed about loans and all this extra stuff. I'm like, what if you have to pay an extra year? What if you have to watch your classmates move on, and like you have to deal with that whole situation where it's just a lot. It really is a lot. So, Terrell and I, we definitely talked about this on the channel before, but like, always remember, you're in dental school, you're in school to be in school. Make the main thing the main thing. Take care of business. Take care of your grades first, even if it's a class in ecology. I don't know, whatever. Like, make sure you get your grades.
Ecology.
Yeah, ecology, right? We were just talking about that earlier. Make sure you do what you need to do and make the highest grades possible. That's all we'll say. Because you don't want to have the extra stress of having to repeat or just it's just a lot, y'all. Trust me, it's a lot.
Okay,
It's a
well,
lot.
this seems to like contradict what you guys said earlier, where it's like, don't stress about grades and like allocate more time towards like
So,
actual procedures.
typically in your first year, and I think Terrell said this earlier, you're really not in clinic like that anyway, right? So you're more so didactically focused. And even though some schools will definitely have you in clinic, but you might be doing a cleaning every, 2 cleanings every month or something like that.
Really shadowing.
Really shadowing. Whereas at the end of your dental school tenure, you're much more so in the clinic. So we're saying, while you have those opportunities, or when your dental school tenure is really focused on didactic studies, focus on that. Make sure you knock that out of the park, especially early on. If you're able to get an A in one of those 5 credit classes like anatomy, or what were some other 5 credit classes we had, Terrell?
Like biochem was a pretty good amount.
Biochem was a good amount.
Oral surgery was
one of those heavier classes.
But yeah,
if you're able to do that in one of those heavier classes, get that A, please.
Tissue injury.
Do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, especially in your second year, or maybe in your first year, who knows? But like, you have certain classes like medicine, right? And medicine is one of those classes whereas you will need for sure when you get into the real world, right?
Yep.
Whereas we have this handbook. One of our professors, she gave us this huge PowerPoint, basically just talking about all the different drug interactions and what to prescribe a patient for this and this. And when I tell y'all, I use that almost every other day. Just control F. Okay, this patient is allergic to penicillin. Okay, what can I give them? What can't I give them? X. So like, there's going to be certain classes like that where you really are also going to want to get that A, because they're really things you need to know. Another course, for example, was even like operative, right? While you're in it, you're just kind of like, okay, well, this is another course I have to pass. But no, if you're a general dentist, you will be doing operative for the rest of your life.
Yep.
You will be cutting crowns for not the rest of your life, for the rest of your career. And, you might not think that it is that important if you have a taper on your crown, but then you start to see that when them crowns start bouncing back,
popping
because
off,
there's not enough retention, you're going to say, oh, I wish I had paid attention when I was in my operative class and they taught me, why I need to, use a bevel, or why I need to use a chamfer burr and things of this nature. So, y'all will figure it out though.
Yeah, there's a lot of little things like that. I think it's not necessarily a contradiction, Nick, and I know it seems like that, or it sounds like that. Whereas though it's like, on one end, don't concentrate on grades, or it's not as important to concentrate on grades, but on the other end, do your best and focus on the grades. It's one, when you get into school, you don't necessarily know what you don't know. So
yeah,
we've known so many people that come in there like, oh, I want to do ortho, I want to do oral surgery, and they know that, so to speak, but when they get into go take a perio class, they kind of enjoy perio a little bit more. But if you didn't focus in a perio class, or if you only focused on that oral surgery class and now your perio grade slipped a little bit, it's going to be harder for you to go and make that pivot into a perio residency or ortho residency. Or, if you want to do general, you weren't paying as much attention in operative, so now you may not know, as fluently the difference between like a resin modified glass ionomer and like a temporary material, or like you got to refresh every single time you go into clinic about what material do you use if you have like a pinpoint exposure. Like it's so many little things that you can just store into your memory bank. And I think that's the more important thing that we're saying, instead of focusing on the grade, is gain the value from the course.
Yeah.
And then, gain the value from the course and make that more of the priority than saying, oh, I got a 4.0, because the 4.0 isn't necessarily what's going to be the applicable thing for you.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. Yeah. I think I agree with you too. Like you want to still like learn everything that like would really matter, but you don't want to focus on like learning like the small facts or like that you don't use, right? Like that are more just for having knowledge, like nerd stuff, honestly.
Yeah. But if you like it, you like it, right? It is what it is.
But I was gonna ask, what courses do you think were just like useless? Like, or like not courses, like anything. Like, what was useless in dental school?
Man,
nothing was useless, but some classes I don't use as much as other ones, right? In actual practice.
It's funny.
Go ahead.
No.
Well, no, it's crazy because like I'll give a great example. Like kind of like the vice versa of that, right? Whereas we had this one class, we had nutrition, and everybody was like, "Oh, it's whatever. It's not that deep of a class. It's a cool class." But I'm like, I talk to my patients about nutrition all the time, right? Whereas I'm never really talking to my patients about biochemistry. And granted, I might need to know how certain things react in certain situations, but in the grand scheme, that's more so our materials class than it is our biochem class, right? Same, quite similar to how you all will see. You probably won't really use your organic chemistry class when you get to dental school. Like, there's really no trace of organic chemistry. At least there wasn't for us. And granted, it was this huge class in undergrad. You had to do good in orgo. I don't remember ever seeing any lectures speaking about covalent bonds at all when I was in dental school. So, unless it was
it'll be a little something on the slide that's like, oh, it bonds this way. It's little
things
like that.
Ionic bonds, whatever. But definitely not to the extent, right? Or like p orbitals. What was all that? Like s? Oh man.
Yeah.
But I mean, in the grand scheme, I think that there was some application to most of the classes that we had. What class? Let me think. That's a good question.
I wouldn't say that it's not. The classes weren't necessary. The classes were good, and you gain things from them. I just think that it's more of a specified application for a lot of that stuff. For instance, like you said, the nutrition class. Okay, you'll understand that about the nutrition, but it's more so the application of these things that's more important than the class itself. So like we learned about tissue bio and tissue injury. So we're learning about these, super complex, mechanisms within the human body, all these different things of how, how it affects the human body. But then in the same token, we just need to know that to understand like realistically inflammation and perio disease. You understand? So it's like, or maybe, if you have you got an endodontic lesion, like you understand why the body is reacting that way more so than just understanding the actual reaction itself or a pathway itself, or understanding why you need to know less. I'm not gonna say you need to know less about it, but your focus is less on the reaction of like a coag cascade than it is about, somebody who has a blood thinning, has to take a blood thinner, when you're doing an extraction, or you have to, it's a whole bunch of little connections that are made more so than being a super genius or super specified knowledge of like one specific thing. So.
But I will tell you one class that we thought was so repetitive while we were in dental school, but now that we're out, it's super important. We used to have so many classes on ethics, right? So
Yep.
many classes on ethics. Like, and I remember I used to just say, like, why do I have to take a new ethics class every single year? But when I tell you, there are so many ways to do the wrong thing. It's like you think that this is such basic information, right? You're like, oh yeah, HIPAA. Oh yeah, I can't show my patient's information. Like, there's just so much going on. For instance, even like say if I had one of my patients' charts up in the back right now, right? I could get in serious trouble for that. Serious trouble. And because I had so many ethics classes and things of that nature, I'm just always on alert. I'm always like, okay, let me make sure nothing is left out. Let me make sure nothing is in any photos that I take. Let me make sure that I'm shredding my schedule every day after I'm done. All these different things. It's huge. It's huge. And I mean, that's the one thing when you do become a clinician, when you do become a doctor, you know, your patients are trusting you to do the best thing to your knowledge to help them, right? And so you really have a huge responsibility on your back. And it's just kind of like, you want to protect that. You want to protect your patients. You want to protect your license. And so having that ethics class, you know, and having all of those different lessons, like literally forced into our brain over the 4 years, you know, granted, I didn't necessarily appreciate it then, but like now that I'm actually out and practicing, and I almost have a subconscious nature about certain things to do and not to do, i.e. taking super thorough notes, i.e. Giving most of my, well, actually all my patients, all treatment options. And then of course, what I think is the best treatment option, all these different things, what you have to do. You know, I really do appreciate sitting there all those hours. So yeah.
Even radiology, just to get like accurate diagnosis, like it's something
Huge.
it seems so small and dumb. Like literally radiology is probably like, you know, a class you might take like once a week, and you go in there and you're taking the radiographs, you're doing these things, and you're like, okay, cool, like I'm getting it. But then when you get in there, and say for instance, you get in there, assistant took a radiograph and it might be cone cut, or maybe the whole root isn't, you know, it's like you can't go in there and guesstimate. You can't go and guess to try to treatment plan anything, you know. It's
and even to that, like Terrell said, like I had one of my assistants the other day. They were like, I was doing a root canal, and I was like, hey, I need to figure out what canal is which. And she's like, well, Dr. Brown, I don't know how to do that. And I'm like, oh, you don't know the slob rule? You know what I mean? And she was like, slob, what is that? And I'm sure you will learn about this, Nick, and everybody else will also. But basically, it's just you're able to tell the positioning of an object on the X-ray by the way you turn the X-ray, or you bend the X-ray, whatever it may be. So, you know, you are the doctor. So everything that you think that you're going to put off to your assistants, everything that you think that you're going to put off to your hygienist, like, no, you are the doctor. If your hygienist should not know more about perio than you. Your assistants should not know how to take better X-rays than you. Granted, they're going to take a lot of X-rays, so they're going to have a lot of practice, but you are the doctor. You have to remember that. You have to be on your A game. You have to be top notch. And don't get me wrong, these hygienists, these assistants will humble you quickly. Like my hygienists and my assistants are beasts. So they make me, I'm going home studying some nights, you know, like literally like.
They've been doing it 15, 20 years. Like,
I'm like, let me refresh my mind. You see what I'm saying? But in the grand scheme, the office, your practice, it is your house. You are the doctor. Everything falls under you. So you need to make sure you are able to do everything. And I think that some dentists get pretty lazy because they do just have amazing assistants and amazing hygienists. And I understand, right? I can see how it had happened or how it could happen. But you know, I promise you, I am trying my best to let it never happen, because you always have to stay on top of it. And they're looking at you as the leader, so you have to know what's going on. So that's a whole nother conversation for another day.
Yeah, man. I was trying to bring it back a little bit to, I guess, just what I guess ended up being important from dental school, or what wasn't. And I think another thing, maybe not as light as just classwork and different things like that, but a lot of those relationships that you do build in dental school, that's huge. That's a very important key aspect of that. You know, like we even, you know, we're still a support system outside of school in terms of, sending each other, recently somebody sending the pictures to our group, like third molars, you know what I mean? Finally, taking third molars out, where it's like in dental school, not everyone gets the experience to take out a third molar, So it's like, it's a support system in it that everyone's learning at the same time. You kind of can bounce ideas off of one another, which CEs people are taking, different things like that. Like, there's a lot of things outside of just the classroom aspect of it. And, I think that's something that a lot of people don't necessarily think going into dental school. Like, you're thinking about, I'm going to dental school. My mission is to become a dentist. Like, if I meet some cool people on the way, then awesome. But at the end of the day, like, you can go to any dental school realistically to become a dentist, but going to your individual dental school and having that experience, that's something that you're going to be able to share with those, 50 people, 100 people, 200 people, depending on which school you go to. And that's something that you kind of take with you after the fact. That's a great network. And even, working in the doctor's office, I'm sure, or a dentist's office, I'm sure Tyler's lead doctor, I'm sure she still talks to people from her class, or some people she went to school with, or refers people out to people that she went to school with, or was in a program when she was in school. So it's like, all that network is like, it's bigger than just being a good individual doctor. You're kind of stepping into a fraternity, so to speak, or of like specialized, a specialized profession. And that's a cool aspect when you really take a step back and think about it. Like, it's a lot bigger than it may seem in the moment when you're worried about tests, or worried about getting a grade, or worried about, what school am I going to get into. Like, it's a bigger I guess, impact than that on you as well as everybody else that you're around, So I think that's something that just needs to be focused on a little bit more, especially while you're in school. Like, really embrace those moments, those long nights in the library, a lot of long nights in the library,
long nights, nights,
the random weekend trips, or like, that one day where you're like, you know what, we're done studying, bro. Like, I'm burnt out, you're burnt out. You need those moments, and you think back and you're like, dang, those are like some of the moments that kind of establish, the people that you end up being really cool with in the long run, and really kind of continue to build that tribe with, to go through. So I think that was just a cool, interesting aspect of dental school that you don't necessarily think of when you're going in. So I'd say that.
Yeah, I definitely didn't know this stuff, but I mean, I really appreciate you guys, sharing this with me and literally like everyone that's watching this. I think it's super helpful and practical.
No, for sure. No, for sure. Yeah. We just wish, we had something like this, when we were starting, and now hopefully the world will. So it's all good.
Yeah, sure. That's real. Well, that's going to wrap it up. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you.
Myself, Terrell, Tyler, stay tuned to our content, as well as head over to our YouTube and check out our videos there, and our Instagram _FutureDDS. Until next time, thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening.